New Karen neighbor reported my harmless hobby. Do you believe it? Yes, she did it. So I used her own rules and got her evicted in shame. All I did was make herbal tea. Yet there I was, standing in my kitchen in Sun Valley Estates, holding a certified letter from the HOA like it was a subpoena from hell. Outside my window, the Arizona sun was bleaching the beige stucco houses while my award-winning red roses glowed like they were in on the joke. On the other side of the hedge, my second lot, rows of lemon balm, valerian, blue vervain, and a dozen other perfectly legal herbs, suddenly looked, to everyone but me, like a cartel farm. According to the letter, I was operating an unlicensed drug distribution business and targeting minors. I actually laughed at that one, nearly spilling my chamomile blend on my pink blouse. Someone had even included grainy photos of teenagers on bikes near my driveway and a blurry baggie of something green, all of it signed, of course, by the HOA president, Brenda. Brenda, with her red tennis outfit, white SUV, and yapping purse dog. Brenda, my brand new next-door neighbor. Brenda, my ex-daughter-in-law. I watched her through the window as she jogged past my roses, fake concern, smile plastered on, probably telling another neighbor she was just protecting the children. My online orders had already started drying up, and 2 suppliers had emailed to pause our contracts over herbal tea. If you think that sounds insane, you're right. But Brenda had made one crucial mistake. She came after my reputation using written rules. And I may be a retired corporate attorney, but I never forgot how to read. If you like seeing HOA bullies eat their own bylaws, hit subscribe now, because Brenda had no idea who she just picked a fight with. I didn't move to Sun Valley Estates to fight anyone. Back when my husband Mark was alive, we used to joke retirement would be the season of lazy mornings. He'd read the paper, I'd tinker with recipes, and the hardest choice of the day would be red roses or white lilies. Cancer had other plans. After he died, the Scottsdale house felt like a museum I couldn't stand to walk through. The silence echoed, so loud it hurt. So I sold it, took my very boring, very respectable corporate attorney pension, and went looking for somewhere contained. Predictable. Quiet. Sun Valley Estates was order-made into architecture. Spotless streets. Beige stucco, rock gardens, not a trash can out of place. The HOA brochure actually called it an oasis of decorum. I stood in front of what would become my house, listening to sprinklers hum, staring at the empty lot next door. Hard pan and gravel. My realtor apologized. To some people, it's an eyesore. To me, it looked like possibility. I bought both lots the next week. One for my home, one for my garden. Inside, I made a sanctuary. Cool, polished floors, white walls, shelves with Mark's old legal texts, and my jars of dried herbs, a kitchen big enough for the grandchildren who descended every other Sunday. My signature looked settled and without thought, soft pink button-down, mid-length denim skirt, gold watch, reading glasses perched on my nose. Outside, I planted defiance in color. I ripped out gravel and installed rose beds, deep, bloody reds that looked outrageous against a neighborhood committed to beige. Within a year, the roses were winning garden club ribbons. The HOA didn't complain. They liked trophies. The side lot became my real joy. Rows of lemon balm, valerian, chamomile, holy basil, hibiscus, legal, USDA approved, deeply boring plants unless you're the kind of woman who believes tea can hold a person together. I ran irrigation, raised beds, shade cloth, and a little glitter-painted sign my granddaughter made, Eleanor's Apothecary. What started as therapy turned into a business by accident. Friends came for tea, then brought friends. Someone asked if I shipped. My son built a simple website. Soon, orders trickled in from around Arizona. At first, it felt charming. Neighbors swore by my blends. I kept everything above board: sales tax ID, cottage license, no street crowds. packages went out through the post office or discreet couriers. My kitchen counters became a tiny factory. Jars lined up like soldiers, pastel labels, blends with soft names, Second Spring, Desert Cool, Good Night, Irene. And for the first time since Mark's funeral, a steady happiness settled into my bones. One evening, with the sky bleeding orange over the saguaros, I set my tea down at the bistro table and spoke to the man who wasn't there. I'm done, Mark. No more law. No more boardrooms, depositions, 14-hour days fighting over cowardly clauses. I'm just going to make tea and mind my roses. I meant it, after 35 years, as the quiet shark, the one they wheeled in to get a merger without spilling blood on the carpet. I was tired of the hunt. So when I signed the HOA paperwork, I felt relief. Rules I understood. Rules meant predictability. The covenants were thick but dull. Paint colors, fence heights, noise, business use. I read them once, closed the binder, and put it neatly on a shelf. For a while, life was exactly what I'd bargained for. Morning sun on herb leaves, grandkids in the sprinklers, friends gossiping at my island with steaming mugs, my online store chiming with new orders like a gentle metronome. Inside the gates of Sun Valley Estates, it finally felt like the world would leave me alone. And for a few golden months, it did. Until my son called one Sunday and said his ex-wife was moving into the community. And you'll never guess, he added. She's the HOA president. I laughed because I thought he was exaggerating. I didn't realize that was the moment my carefully built piece started its countdown to detonation. The first sign something had shifted was so small, I almost missed it. Wednesday morning, 80 degrees by 9, I was in my usual uniform, soft pink blouse, denim skirt, gold watch, bottling hibiscus concentrate for weekend orders. Through the window, my red roses flared against Sun Valley's beige, and my herb lot shimmered under shade cloth like a green secret. My phone pinged. Order canceled. Sun Valley Fit Mom. Lisa, 2 streets over. She'd sworn Second Spring saved her from hot flashes. A minute later, order canceled, Desert Patriot Dad. Tom, the retired firefighter who bragged about my hibiscus lemonade like he earned commission. I checked email. 3 refund requests from neighbors, all with the same copy-pasted line. Due to concerns raised at last night's informal HOA discussion, we're going to hold off on herbal products for now. Concerns. I hadn't been at any informal discussion. I'd been teaching my granddaughter how to pinch basil so it wouldn't bolt. Outside, mug in hand, I watched Mrs. Patel and another neighbor hesitate before smiling. Bright mouths, cold eyes. Mrs. Patel stammered that she'd stopped the tea on doctor's advice. Interesting, considering her doctor had been the one who nudged her toward valerian. Then a white Mercedes SUV slid past like a shark in shallow water. Brenda driving, visor down, dog yapping from her lap in a rhinestone harness. She gave me the kind of finger wave you reserve for waitresses. She slowed near Mrs. Patel, window lowering just a crack. Brenda murmured. Mrs. Patel's hand flew to her mouth. I caught one word clearly. Kids. By afternoon, I took 4 sad little packages to the post office instead of my usual 12. Even the clerk avoided my eyes. On the community bulletin board by the pool, something new had appeared. An anonymous flyer with the HOA logo clipped neatly in the corner. Protect our children. It screamed in patriotic red and blue. Underneath, be aware of unauthorized substances being distributed within Sun Valley Estates. Contact the HOA president for confidential reports. No names, no proof, but beside it, someone had taped a blurry photo of my herb lot, snapped over the fence, and zoomed until the leaves became smudges. Back home, more orders canceled mid-checkout, abandoned carts like dropped conversations. That evening, my friend Carol stopped by. Normally, she'd burst in demanding extra hibiscus. This time she hovered on the threshold, eyes darting, Brenda caught me at the mailboxes. She whispered. She said the board is looking into some things, and we should be careful who we associate with. She implied things about kids, about what you really sell. I held my voice steady. Do you believe her? Of course not, Carol said, shoulders sinking. But people here scare easy. And Brenda's got that stupid title. She squeezed my hand. I'll still order. Just maybe ship to my sister's house for a while. After she left, I stood at my kitchen island surrounded by neat rows of jars and labeled tins and understood. This wasn't gossip. This was a campaign. The next morning, one of my bulk suppliers emailed. They were suspending shipments due to a complaint about potential non-compliant use of their products in my area. No details, just enough vagueness to bruise. Out in the herb lot, lemon balm stirred in the heat, oblivious. My red roses leaned over the property line like scandalized ants. I told myself it was a phase, whispers, a young president hunting for a cause. Then I opened my mailbox and found Brenda's first certified love letter from the HOA. Bold print, accusations typed like verdicts. That was the moment I understood she wasn't trying to annoy me. She was trying to erase me. And the problem with picking a fight with a woman who spent 35 years weaponizing paper is, I know exactly how long ink lasts. If this is already making your blood boil, tap the like button, because Brenda's concerned neighbor act was only her first move. It took exactly a week for the letter to turn into a performance. By then, the air in Sun Valley Estates felt heavier. Neighbors who used to wander into my kitchen now hovered at the edge of my driveway, as if my roses might spit subpoenas. Monday, a bright yellow door hanger appeared on my knob. Reminder: unauthorized business activity and distribution of unregulated substances may result in fines, liens, or further action. No names, just distribution underlined twice. Questions? Contact President Brenda Moore. I read it once, slid it into a plastic sleeve, and filed it in a folder labeled Sun Valley HOA Communications. Tuesday, 2 teenage girls lingered beyond my herb lot fence. Phones out, zooming on lemon balm like it was contraband. Can I help you? I called, mug of lavender mint in hand. They stammered that Mrs. Moore offered community service hours for documenting landscaping violations. Landscaping, I repeated mildly. Be sure to photograph the chamomile. It's especially dangerous in the wrong teacup. They scurried off. Over their shoulders, I caught Brenda watching from an upstairs window, visor on indoors, phone to her ear, until the blinds snapped shut. By Wednesday, the whispers had teeth. At the mail kiosk, 2 women cut their gossip short the second they saw my padded envelopes. On the bulletin board, Brenda had added another flyer under Protect Our Children, signs of substance abuse in teens, complete with stock photo theatrics. Beside it, another blurry fence photo of my herb beds, this time with a red circle around what was plainly a bag of potting soil. Cute. In my mailbox, another certified letter, louder and uglier. Second notice. Demand to cease unauthorized business activity. Board has received multiple reports of possible distribution of controlled substances to minors. Signed with a dramatic flourish, President Brenda Moore. I stared at my reflection in the kettle. For 35 years, executives paid that woman, the discreet one, the surgical one, to keep their names off the front page. I'd promised Mark I was done being her, but this wasn't petty drama anymore. It felt like a noose tightening. Thursday, my largest supplier called. An anonymous complaint had spooked their lawyers. Minors, unlicensed sales, HOA investigation. They froze my account until resolved. I thanked her calmly, hung up, and let myself breathe for 30 seconds. Then my eyes landed on the HOA covenant binder I'd shelved months ago, dustless and smug. Brenda thought that binder was her weapon. She was half right. Friday, brought a friendly check-in. A golf cart stopped at my curb, Gary and Denise from the board. Gary admitted, more or less, he didn't read rules. He just enforced them. They rambled about teens, strange smells, little baggies, and suggested I sign an acknowledgement and stop all deliveries to make this go away. Deliveries? I echoed. You mean USPS packages I take to the post office like every other home business in this zip code? They blinked like the concept of licensing had just been invented. I offered very politely to provide copies of my cottage license, sales tax registration, and city clearance, or send them straight to HOA council so someone could explain what home occupation permitted means. Denise flushed. There's no need to get legal. I smiled. It wasn't friendly. If your president is circulating criminal accusations about me under HOA letterhead, I said softly, legal is exactly where this goes. But first, I'll need everything in writing. Every complaint, every report, every directive Brenda thinks she can issue. Email works. Certified mail is better. Gary tried to dress it up as leadership, security committees, cameras, neighborhood watch. I said, so this is a crusade. After they left with nothing but vibes and no paperwork, I went inside, pulled the binder off the shelf, and opened it. The spine cracked like a gunshot in my quiet kitchen. I brewed holy basil for focus, sat at the island with a yellow legal pad, and started reading use restrictions, board powers and limits, conduct standards, conflicts of interest, and the defamation language volunteer boards always forget exists. The more I read, the calmer I felt. Every flyer, every whisper, every staged concern, it wasn't a tidal wave. It was evidence, drops in a tidy bucket. Brenda thought she was winning a popularity contest. What she didn't realize was that she was handing me exactly what I needed, a paper trail. And paper trails don't disappear. They lead. And I was already following them straight back to Brenda. The day it stopped being annoying and became dangerous started with a knock that sounded like a badge. I set my holy basil tea down, adjusted my glasses, and opened the door to 2 Phoenix police officers sweating politely on my porch. Behind them, framed by my red roses, Brenda's white Mercedes sat like an eager witness. Visor down, phone up, pretending. Mrs. Vance, the taller officer asked. Yes, I said, smoothing my pink blouse. Come in before you bake. Inside my immaculate foyer, grandkid photos, garden ribbons, Mark's framed law license. The shorter officer chose his words carefully. An anonymous tip about possible marijuana distribution to minors. They were obligated to follow up. I exhaled, soft and incredulous. Of course you did. They asked if they could take a quick look. I agreed, nothing to hide, but made one thing crystal clear. This was harassment orchestrated by the HOA president, who also happened to be my ex-daughter-in-law. You'll find her in the white Mercedes, pretending not to watch. The younger officer glanced outside. Brenda's visor snapped lower. We toured the property. Lemon balm, valerian, chamomile. One officer actually Googled a plant. This is catnip. For neighborhood cats, I said. They seem less judgmental. No grow lights. No cash. No parade of teens. Just drip irrigation, labeled beds, and an old woman with a gold watch ticking calmly. I told them my business was online and offered documentation, cottage license, sales tax ID, zoning approval. They knew a wild goose chase when they saw one. Everything looks normal, the tall officer said. Sorry for the inconvenience. Inconvenience is a parking ticket. I replied, this is defamation and wasted public resources. Please note nothing illegal was found. They promised they would. As they stepped off my porch, Brenda's SUV roared past like she'd merely been heading out. One officer watched her go. HOA president, he murmured. Yes, I said, very committed to community theater. When the door closed, The quiet didn't feel peaceful. It felt contaminated. I went straight to my desk, opened a new digital folder. Incident, police visit, and wrote a memo, date, time, badge numbers, exact phrasing, my responses. Old reflexes slid back into place. Then I checked email. Suppliers spooked by criminal investigations. One terminated the relationship outright. My local order map turned into a desert. Neighbors only buying if it shipped to relatives across town. The spreadsheet didn't lie. Internal sales down 80% in 2 weeks. All because a bitter 30-something in a tennis skirt decided to turn lemon balm into contraband. That evening, Sun Valley's newsletter arrived. Community safety update. Under Brenda's chirpy from the president's desk, she bragged the board, in cooperation with law enforcement, had acted on reports of drug activity involving teens, thanks to vigilant residents. No names, but beneath it sat a grainy photo of 2 boys on bikes near my driveway, timestamp clumsily edited. I recognized them immediately. My grandsons. I sat very still. My hands didn't shake. The tea had gone cold. She hadn't just come for my business. She'd used my grandkids as props. The next day, Gary showed up with a clipboard and a printed notice of violation. Unauthorized business, loitering of minors, odors, traffic, an initial $500 fine escalating weekly unless I ceased operations. He claimed the board voted in an emergency executive session called by Brenda, no notice, no hearing. I took the paper, noted the generic language, missing evidence, and the single signature. I won't be paying this, I said calmly, and I won't be ceasing a lawful business. But I will request, in writing, the minutes, the names present, the vote tally, and every document you relied on. Gary puffed up and threatened a lien. I smiled, small and sharp. Only after following your own procedures, which, fortunately for you, are written down. After he left, I laid everything out on my island. Certified letters, the yellow door hanger, the anonymous flyers, screenshots of the newsletter with my grandson's blurred faces, the police memo, supplier emails referencing criminal investigations. Individually, irritations. Together, a pattern. I pulled down the HOA binder and opened to powers and duties of the board. There it was: due process, notice and hearing requirements, standards of conduct, prohibitions on personal vendettas, limits on indemnification when a director acts outside authority, and buried deep, conflict of interest and removal for cause for knowing misrepresentation or abuse of position resulting in material harm to a member. Material harm. Such a dry phrase for what she'd done to my name, my business, my grandsons. For months, I'd kept the shark leashed out of respect for a promise I made to Mark. But promises, he used to say, apply to who you are, not what you must defend. That night, I poured 1 glass of his favorite red and watched the last light burn behind the saguaros. I'm sorry, love, I said into the desert air. I tried, but she's not stopping. And if I don't act, she'll do this to the next quiet neighbor who can't fight back. I opened a new folder, physical and digital, and named it with a satisfaction I didn't bother to hide. Brenda, misconduct. Then I started to work, because it was suddenly clear they weren't just trying to find me. They were trying to destroy me. And from that moment on, every notice, every overreach, every pretty HOA letterhead lies stopped being an irritation and became evidence. Tell me in the comments, what would you do if your HOA tried to turn your hobby into a crime scene? Because for Brenda, that $500 fine was just the opening salvo, and she had no idea I'd already started building the case that would take her down. The funny thing is, Brenda thought the violation notice would put me on defense. Instead, it reminded me exactly who I used to be. I sat at my kitchen island with a cooling cup of closing argument tea and laid everything out like exhibits: the violation, newsletters, flyers, supplier emails, and my memo on the police visit. Beside them, The HOA covenant binder lay open, its flimsy rings protesting as I flipped pages with the kind of focus I used to bill $600 an hour for. Powers and duties, standards of conduct, director liability. I murmured, my gold watch ticking steady. Under due process. I circled what Brenda had ignored: notice and an opportunity to be heard, objective investigation. No fines without a hearing. Underuse restrictions. I underlined the clause that protected my business. Home occupations were allowed as long as there was no client traffic, no signage, and all sales happened off-site. That was my entire operation. No walk-ins, no open hours, just packages from my herb lot to the post office. Then I found the line that made my spine straighten. Indemnification exceptions. No director gets protected for gross negligence, willful misconduct, or knowing misrepresentation. Knowing misrepresentation. I thought about Brenda's newsletter bragging that the board and law enforcement had intervened in drug-related activity involving neighborhood teens. I pictured my grandson's blurred faces, the edited timestamp, and the report that would show what the officers actually found. Nothing illegal. A few pages later, I hit removal for cause. Owners could remove directors for abuse of position causing material harm, including defamation under HOA authority. Dry language for exactly what Brenda was doing in full color. I closed the binder, smelled lemon balm and printer ink, and whispered, I tried, Mark. I gave them every chance to be reasonable. Then I opened a fresh legal pad and wrote, HOA v. Vance, actually Vance v. HOA. My plan was simple. It consisted of the following 5 tasks. Task 1. Preserve evidence. Print every concerned neighbor. Email every supplier cancellation mentioning criminal investigations, every newsletter and flyer, every screenshot of Brenda's chirpy Facebook posts. I filed it all in a binder labeled HOA. Misconduct, and backed up the digital copies to a thumb drive and a cloud folder my grandson named Nana's Stuff, Do Not Delete. Task 2. Calm the cops. I emailed the officer whose card I kept, photos, permits, facts, and one line any professional would read twice. Given the ongoing harassment by the HOA president, I may need that report for a civil matter later. Task 3. Choke the rumor well. No mass email. No megaphone. I invited 5 of the neighborhood's loudest tea sippers over, Mrs. Patel, the firefighter's wife, Carol, and 2 others. Pink blouse, denim skirt, lemon bars, and 3 pots of tea. I set the violation and newsletter on the table and let them read. Then I showed licenses, website logs, and the covenant clause that proved my business was lawful. Brenda didn't just lie as a neighbor. I told them. She lied as president. By the time they left, their outrage wasn't aimed at me anymore. Task 4. Follow the money. HOA budget reports showed legal expenses spiking the month Brenda took office, even though there were no lawsuits. I printed statements, highlighted line items, and filed them under potential misuse of funds. Task 5. Find Brenda's weak clause. And that's where she broke. County property records showed Brenda's showpiece house wasn't in her name. It belonged to a shell LLC, Sunrise Desert Holdings. The covenants required board members to be owners of record or spouses of owners, with strict rules around leasing and occupancy. On her HOA candidacy form, Brenda checked owner and wrote Brenda more under name on deed. The county recorder said otherwise. There it was, knowing misrepresentation in ink. By dusk, I could see Brenda pacing behind her massive window in her red tennis outfit, phone to her ear, dog bouncing at her heels. She still thought this was about whether she could find me into submission. She hadn't realized the ground under her feet was made of the same paper she'd been waving at me. I took a slow sip of tea and said to my empty kitchen, from this moment on, I stop reacting and start planning. Because I wasn't just going to clear my name. I was going to use every dry little clause she never bothered to read to pull the presidency out from under her and show the whole neighborhood how flimsy her power really was. And the best part, I didn't have to invent a single thing. All I had to do was let Brenda keep doing exactly what she'd been doing. On the record, the shark was awake. Now it was time to feed it. If this already makes your blood boil, hit the like button and tell me in the comments, what would you do if your HOA tried to turn your legal business into a crime scene? Subscribe, because Brenda's next move was going to become my best evidence, and the vote that followed would hit her like a guillotine. The next morning, I didn't put on armor. I put on my soft, pink blouse, my denim skirt, my gold watch, and slid my reading glasses to the tip of my nose. Then I poured a mug of Neighborhood Watch tea and opened a fresh binder with 3 tabs: facts, lies, opportunities. Investigation isn't glamorous. It's repetition with good note-taking. I wrote a clean timeline on a yellow legal pad. When Brenda moved in, when the concerns started, the flyers, the newsletter featuring my grandsons, the police visit, the violation notice. Each entry got a time, a source, and a document number. Every supporting paper went into a plastic sleeve, flagged, and cross-referenced. Then I filled the gaps quietly. First, I requested the police report from the drug complaint. 2 days later, the PDF arrived, dull, factual, and lethal. Anonymous call. No illegal substances observed. Resident cooperative. No minors present. No further action. I highlighted those 4 words and filed the report behind Brenda's newsletter, where she bragged about intervening in drug-related activity involving neighborhood teens. In my margin, I wrote, knowing misrepresentation? Check. Next, I went after HOA records. The covenants promised access to minutes and violation files upon reasonable request. So I sent a calm, precise letter, certified, and by email, asking for meeting minutes where my name or property came up, written complaints, any law enforcement correspondence, and the documentation used to justify fines. Delivery confirmation went straight into fax. While they stalled, I went fishing in shallower waters, the residents' Facebook group. Search term, herbal. Up popped Brenda's post in her red tennis outfit profile photo, warning parents that someone was handing herbal teas to teens and claiming the HOA was working with the police. A teen I recognized, Josh, commented that I only give mint tea and cookies. Brenda scolded him and hid the comment. I screenshotted the entire thread, captured timestamps, exported it to PDF, and filed it under lies. Off-platform, I went analog. I visited Josh's mother with hibiscus cookies and asked for the truth in writing so adults couldn't twist it. Josh signed a short statement. He'd only ever had tea and cookies at my house and had never seen drugs. I collected 2 more statements that week, one from Carol about Brenda's insinuations, and one from Mrs. Patel confirming her doctor had actually recommended my valerian blend. All of it went into fax. The board finally replied with thin, redacted minutes. Discussion of safety concerns, executive session. Board supports president. No names, no vote tally, no evidence. But their sloppiness helped me more than their cooperation. They admitted there were no formal complaints on file, only verbal reports to Brenda. They also used executive session the way amateurs use duct tape, for gossip, not legal necessity. I flagged the bylaws, tabbed their violations, and noted what they didn't send. No police correspondence, no investigative notes, certainly no proof. If Brenda had anything, she was hoarding it personally. Good. That meant the only way to drag it into daylight was to make her waive it in public. So I drafted a formal request for hearing under their own bylaws, demanded advance disclosure of any evidence, requested an open session, and CC'd the HOA's law firm. Then I attached my permits, licenses, tax ID, the police report, witness statements, and the very bylaw sections they were violating. I wasn't asking for fairness. I was putting them on notice. Now I needed Brenda to overplay her hand. So I gave her a reason. I added a small line to my website FAQ. Local pickup not available due to HOA restrictions. All orders shipped by mail. True enough. Brenda took the bait. In the Facebook group she posted in all caps about dangerous businesses, claimed I was fear-mongering, and promised further action. Then she hinted she had messages from minors and photos the police used. Perfect. I screenshotted every word and replied once. I'd address questions at the hearing I requested because transparency benefits everyone. 4 minutes later, the HOA manager emailed. My open violation hearing was scheduled for next Thursday, 7 p.m. at the clubhouse. I filed it under opportunities and looked out the window at Brenda pacing in her driveway, visor low, dog yapping, acting like she'd booked herself a stage. She didn't realize I'd just built the trapdoor. All that was left was making sure she walked into that clubhouse carrying every lie she'd told, while I arrived with receipts, witnesses, and a dossier tight enough to snap. Because the file was almost complete, only one document was missing, the one that wouldn't just clear my name, but knock Brenda out of the president's chair entirely. And I knew exactly where to find it. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe so you don't miss how I turned that hearing into Brenda's worst nightmare. Because next, I'm going to bait her into putting her proof on the record right before I show the room she may not even be legally allowed to be president in the first place. The missing document, the one that could turn a tense little hearing into a full-blown implosion, was hiding in plain sight under Brenda's own artificial grass. Her candidacy form said she was an owner. The county recorder said she wasn't. Somewhere between those two was daylight, and I intended to drag her into it. I started with the management office, the paid manager who preferred quiet over drama. I walked in wearing my usual uniform, pink blouse, denim skirt, gold watch, tea in a stainless tumbler, glasses tipped down as I smiled. Quick records question. I said, could you email me the current owner roster, names and lot numbers as of this month? 10 minutes later, the spreadsheet hit my inbox. I scrolled to Brenda's address. Owner of record, Sunrise Desert Holdings, LLC. Occupant, blank. No more. No spouse notation. No designated representative on file. I opened the covenants and read the eligibility clause like scripture. Directors must be an owner of record or spouse. Tenants only serve if an absentee owner appoints them in writing and discloses it. On paper, our president was nobody that alone wouldn't throw her out. But it made every fine, threat, and signature under President Sun Valley Estates radioactive, especially after she dragged police to my door and circulated criminal accusations. So I set the bait. I drafted a comm letter to Sunrise Desert Holdings at their off-site address, CCNG, the HOA attorney, and board. I explained that Ms. Brenda Moore was serving as president despite not being an owner of record, and that in that role she had initiated fines, police involvement, and public drug accusations, already disproven by a police report and witness statements I enclosed. I pointed gently to the indemnification limits for knowing misrepresentation and suggested the actual owner might want to confirm whether she was authorized and whether her conduct created liability. Certified mail. Blue ink signature. Then I waited. The response came faster than I expected. 2 days before the hearing, a silver Tesla pulled up to Brenda's gray-white showpiece. A man in his 50s stepped out, the kind of wary look you see on someone counting investment properties. Owner, I thought. I just happened to be pruning my red roses when he knocked. Brenda opened the door in her red tennis skirt, visor crooked, dog yapping. Even from behind my hedge, I saw my envelope in his hand. Their voices rose, muffled, sharp. She gestured toward my herb lot, then my house. He shook his head, jabbed the letter, pointed at the turf like it was evidence. Her face cycled through shock, anger, and panic in under a minute. Then he said something short and final and walked away. Brenda stood frozen in the doorway, livid, gripping my letter like it might bite. Hook, line, and LLC. That night, the HOA portal quietly updated the hearing agenda. Item 1, violation hearing, lot 23/24. Item 2, board composition review. Board composition. So Sunrise Desert Holdings had made a phone call. I spent the next day tightening the trap. On one side of my island, the drug narrative, newsletter with my grandson's blurred faces, the police report, Brenda's Facebook fear-mongering, protect our children, flyers, teen statements, each inconsistency flagged. On the other, the governance sins, Brenda's candidacy form claiming ownership, the roster proving she wasn't, the eligibility and removal clauses, indemnification exceptions, her further action threats, and the redacted minutes showing she'd pulled the board into her vendetta behind closed doors. In the middle, I placed one clean page, the step-by-step path that would walk the room from safety concerns to who exactly put this woman in charge. Then I made one emotional move. I called Carol and asked her to come, not to speak, just to sit in the room with people who actually knew me. She agreed instantly. Word spread anyway. By Thursday, half the cul-de-sac knew there'd be a showdown at the clubhouse, not because I advertised it, but because everyone loves watching an HOA explain itself. And Brenda, she doubled down, right on schedule. An hour before the hearing, she posted in the Facebook group in full caps, the board would be addressing a serious safety issue, a member refusing to pay fines, and everyone should attend to support a drug-free Sun Valley. I screenshotted that too. Then I reapplied lipstick, straightened my pink blouse, slid my glasses to the tip of my nose, and filled a thermos with my strongest hibiscus blend. Because if Brenda wanted an audience, she was about to get one. And when everyone gathered in that air-conditioned clubhouse, clutching their fears about drugs and safety, I was going to give them something else to worry about. What happens when the loudest rule enforcer in the room turns out to be the biggest rule breaker? So tell me, what would you do if you discovered your HOA president might not even be legally eligible to hold the seat? And if you haven't yet, hit subscribe, because that hearing wasn't going to put me on trial. It was going to put Brenda and her fake presidency under the brightest light Sun Valley Estates had ever seen. The clubhouse looked like every bland conference room I'd ever watched someone lose power in, stackable chairs, humming AC, cheap art, except the desert sun bled orange through the blinds, and half the faces in the room used to drink my hibiscus lemonade. Brenda sat at the front table in her red tennis outfit and visor, HOA binder stacked beside a neat pile of papers. Her little dog whined from a designer tote. The rest of the board looked like kids who copied the wrong homework. I walked in with my tea thermos and a plain, fat binder, pink blouse, denim skirt, gold watch, glasses on my nose like a bookmark. I smiled like it was book club. Jenna, the manager, cleared her throat. Violation hearing, lots 23 and 24. The board will present, then Mrs. Vance can respond. Wonderful, I said. I do love a good presentation. Brenda started fast and loud. Multiple reports, minors loitering, strange odors, baggies, concerned parents. She slapped down grainy printouts, teens on bikes near my driveway, a zoomed-in bag of something green, screenshots of her own Facebook panic posts with my name carefully omitted. Then she held up the HOA newsletter like a trophy. We even had to involve the police, she said. May I see that? I asked, mild as chamomile. I flipped through her evidence while my watch ticked in the silence. The bike photo timestamp. The newsletter bragging they intervened before tragedy. The all-caps drug-free Sun Valley. Caption, is that all, Madam President? I asked. She tightened her jaw. We also have verbal reports. Confidential. Of course, I said. So, rumor plus your narrative. Gary tried to jump in, how it made people uncomfortable. I lifted one hand and he stopped mid-sentence without even realizing it. With respect, discomfort isn't a violation, I said. And you don't get to hang the word drugs over my home because Brenda is uncomfortable with lemon balm. Nervous laughter rippled. I opened my binder and slid copies toward the board. Exhibit 1, the police report from your drug raid. Please read the highlighted line. Jenna read it, voice flat. No illegal substances observed. Resident cooperative. No minors present. No further action. I let that sentence sit in the room like a brick. So the only official investigation you bragged about found nothing. Yet the newsletter claims you intervened in teen drug activity. That's not confusion. That's knowing misrepresentation. Next tab. Exhibit 2, signed statements from the only teens who've ever been near my herb lot, Josh, who comes from mint tea and cookies, and my grandsons, plus the soccer schedule. I held up Brenda's bike photo. Your timestamp says 2:37 p.m. My grandsons were at practice. They were in my kitchen at 1 o'clock dropping off a laptop. The times don't match. Parents in the back craned their necks. Next tab. Exhibit 3. My cottage permit, tax registration, and the city's confirmation that my home occupation is legal. No walk-ins. No signage. No traffic. All orders shipped by USPS. Something you cannot regulate. I turn the covenants toward them. Section 8.3 allows home occupations under those exact conditions. Would anyone like to point to the clause that says, unless the president dislikes herbs? Silence. So factually, I said, steady, we have a legal business, no drugs, and no minors involved in anything except lemonade and Wi-Fi. And yet, Brenda used the association logo to run a drug scare that cut my community sales by 80% and cost me suppliers. That's material harm. Then I slid out the paper that changed the temperature in the room. Brenda's candidacy form appeared on the screen, her handwriting blown up large. I read the question aloud. Owner of record or spouse of owner? You checked owner and wrote Brenda Moore under name on deed. Correct. Her visor dipped. I live there. Do you? I asked softly, because the county recorder and the association's own roster show the owner is Sunrise Desert Holdings, LLC. No Brenda Moore on the deed. No spouse. No designated representative on file. Murmurs erupted like a dam cracking. I read the eligibility clause clearly. Directors must be owners or spouses. Tenants can't serve without written appointment disclosed to the association. I looked at Brenda over my glasses. So, when exactly did Sunrise Desert Holdings authorize you, in writing, to sit on this board? Her mouth opened, then closed. This is a technicality. No, I said quieter now. This is the foundation of your authority. You sign violations. You called police. You put my grandsons in a drug alert newsletter. You spent HOA money on legal consultations, all while not meeting the basic requirement to sit in that chair. I flipped to the clause I'd been waiting for and read it like scripture. No indemnification for willful misconduct or knowing misrepresentation. Removal for cause for abuse of position and defamation under HOA authority. This isn't an HOA disagreement anymore, Brenda. I said, it's falsification. You used a title you weren't eligible for to publish a fake drug scare about your ex-mother-in-law in a conservative community using your own step-grandsons as props. The room went still in the way storms do right before the first crack of thunder. You don't have a drug problem, I told the crowd. You have a governance problem. I closed my binder with a soft thud. Here's what I'm requesting, and what your bylaws require. Rescind every fine, issue a written retraction, publicly acknowledge the police found nothing, and place on tonight's agenda the removal of Brenda Moore from any position on this board for cause. Brenda shot up, dog shrieking. You can't do this to me. I built this HOA. You built a stage, I said softly. You forgot I know how to work a courtroom. Behind her, Jenna's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, went pale, and whispered, "It's Sunrise Desert Holdings. They're listening." I took a slow sip of tea, because exposing Brenda in that clubhouse was only the beginning. What came next would hit her, where people like her feel it most, in the deed, the title, and the door she thought she controlled. Tell me in the comments, at what exact moment would you have stood up and called her out? Because humiliating Brenda in that clubhouse was just Act 1. The real pain for her pocket and her power was about to start. Silence after my speech became its own creature. The AC hummed. Brenda's little dog whined in its tote. Gary shuffled papers and tried to avoid the room like it might subpoena him. "Thank you, Eleanor," he started. "The board will deliberate in executive." "No," a voice snapped from the back. "Tom, the retired firefighter. You dragged us here for drugs in our neighborhood. We're staying. If you want to hide, do it in your own garage." Murmurs rolled forward. Agreement, anger, relief. Jenna glanced down at the bylaws, lips moving as she skimmed, then swallowed hard. "Open session was noticed," she said. "Unless we're discussing legal advice, owners can stay." Brenda hissed, "Jenna." But Jenna slid the binder toward her. Section 4.7, Brenda, you highlighted it yourself. The irony made my tea taste sweeter. Gary leaned into the mic, suddenly smaller. "First, regarding the fines against Mrs. Vance. Given the police report, the business licenses, and the home occupation clause, I move we rescind the violations and refund any fines assessed." Denise didn't even hesitate. "Second." All in favor. Hands went up fast. Brenda's didn't. Opposed. Only her manicured nails hovered, alone. "The motion carries," Gary said. "Violations rescinded. Eleanor, we apologize for any distress." There it was on the record. I took a sip and nodded. "Thank you. I'll look forward to written confirmation and a correction in the next newsletter." Brenda slammed her palm down. "You can't cave because she printed paperwork. She's undermining the board." Which brings us to item 2. Jenna cut in, voice tight. Board composition. The room leaned forward as one. Jenna read from her laptop, hands barely trembling. Following correspondence from Sunrise Desert Holdings, LLC, the owner of Lot 31. The association has been informed they did not authorize Ms. Brenda Moore to act as a director, and were not aware she represented herself as an owner of record on her candidacy form. The gasp could have been bottled. Gary swallowed. They also requested we stop allowing a non-owner to sign association contracts in their name, effective immediately. Their attorney indicated they will not indemnify Ms. Moore for actions taken while she misrepresented herself. Brenda went pale under the spray tan. "They can't. I've been running this community." Everyone knew. Everyone assumed. I said quietly, "You told them you were something you weren't." Gary flipped to the flagged page. Per section 6.2, directors must be owners of record or spouses. Ms. Moore is neither, and there's no written authorization on file. She is ineligible. Denise cleared her throat, actually useful for once. And per 6.4, removal for cause includes knowing misrepresentation and abuse of position resulting in material harm. We just heard a lot about both. Tom raised his hand like he owned the mic. "I move we remove Brenda Moore immediately for cause and bar her from holding any office for the maximum period. Put 5 years in there." Seconded. 3 voices fired at once. Brenda half stood, knocking her tote. The dog sprang out, nails skittering across the linoleum. "This is a witch hunt. Without me, we'll have trash cans out and unapproved paint." "Without you," Mrs. Patel said, voice shaking but clear, Maybe we won't have neighbors' grandkids in fake drug alerts. The vote wasn't close. Every board member except Brenda raised a hand. The motion carries, Gary said, and for the first time all night his voice had steel. Effective immediately, Brenda Moore is removed from the board, and as president, Jenna retrieved the association laptop and keys. Brenda clutched the laptop case like a life raft. I'll sue. I'll take every one of you. You'll do it as a private citizen, I said, meeting her eyes over my mug. Without our insurance paying for your tantrum. I tapped the indemnification clause. Reread that before you start drafting threats. Nobody clapped. This wasn't a movie. But the room exhaled like someone finally opened a window. For Brenda, though, the worst was still coming. Because Sunrise Desert Holdings hadn't just yanked her title. They had other concerns about how she'd been using their very expensive house. And the HOA, suddenly terrified of liability, wasn't in the mood to look away anymore. From that night on, the power in Sun Valley flipped like a switch, and every consequence that followed hit Brenda exactly where she'd always believed she was untouchable. Hit like this story so far. Tap the like button, because what happened to her lease, her status, and that perfect gray and white palace next door was the kind of bureaucratic karma you can't buy.